Hello and good morning, friends. Today I want to take you with me to take a look at a house built in 1971 where we have no records. The homeowners never touched the system. We don't know what we're walking into, and I want to show you what we find. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so first thing we want to do is we want to find out exactly where the septic tank is, right? So we can see here that we have our clean out in the bush, grass thing, whatever that is, and the riser right there. But let's say that we couldn't find that. How we would eventually go about looking for this is we look for the vent stack on the roof, right? So we know the bathroom's over there, we know the vent stack's on the roof. In our area, all of the homes generally will have the septic within about 15-20 feet of the vent, right? So if we know the vent's over there, we know the septic's gonna be in the front of the house. Now, in the 1970s, generally, you wouldn't have any of this plastic stuff. You would have a cast iron clean out right on the front, and you would maybe have a riser. Most of the time, though, you would not, right? So what we would be looking for is a 6-inch cast iron clean out right on the front. Generally, if this doesn't exist, you would use a metal detector to determine the location of that. But somebody has gone ahead and replaced that, so that's a really, really good thing. So we know that this house was built in 1970s. We know that what we see right now is not what we would expect to see from a house of that age. So that means somebody's done some work on this at some point, right? Now, usually if you see somebody doing work on a septic system, it's because something went wrong in the past. So most of the time, these systems would be a single tank to a single dry well. We've covered dry wells in the past, so we've already gone through this, but we're not going to go through it today. Beyond the dry well is the absorption system, and that's what's going to basically deal with all of the water that exits the tank. That's how the water dissipates into the soil. Now, we see that we have a new clean out and new riser, but the tank itself, if we look inside, looks to be original, right? How we know this is the style of lid and the placement of that lid. So that lid is a 24-inch round, and that's going to be in the middle of the tank. Generally, these houses in the 70s, they would have a small 12 by 12 lid in the front, 24 lid in the back or middle, another 12 by 12 in the back. So because we have the placement of the clean out up front, big lid in the middle, presumptively small lid in the back, we can guesstimate that this is going to be roughly original to the home. We don't have records, so we're not 100% sure beyond what we can see, right? Inside of here, we're looking to see what kind of baffles we see and what kind of solids there are. And how we measure the solids is one of these fancy devices right here. This is called a sludge judge. Basically, it's a giant straw with a ping pong ball at the bottom of it. And what happens is you push this into the liquid. Each of those red lines will be a foot. And then as you pull up, the ping pong ball seats in the blue part, and it basically captures the liquid as well as the solids, so you can measure to see how full the tank is. This is the most efficient way to measure your tank. Most homeowners don't have this, and that's why most homeowners will pump out their tank every couple of years. We don't know how long it's been since this tank was last pumped. We can be running into some issues with the absorption system, and that's where it kind of comes into play of we need to figure out where this thing is. So we know that in a house from the 1970s, we would expect to see a single tank to a single pit somewhere in the front yard, right? So we already know where the tank's at. Generally, most of these pits would be about 10-15 feet from the tank itself. How I find that is I use a metal detector and a probe. So what I'll do is I'll basically start sweeping in a grid-like pattern with the metal detector to see if I can find the clean out or the rebar in the dry well's lid. I've already done that and we didn't find it, right? So that means that something else must be in place. And remember, we already saw that they've replaced parts of the system by adding that riser and a plastic or PVC clean out. So it means somebody's done work. And more than likely, based off the age of the home, the original dry well has probably already failed, and there was actually a replacement of the septic, and that's why we have those additional pieces of equipment installed. So if they replace the septic, that means now we're looking for drain fields, right? Generally, most septic systems will last 30 to 40 years, give or take, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. But if we're looking for drain fields, now we got to play the fun game of where would they have put it in this property? And let me show you how I go about determining where drain fields are. All right, so we're looking at the tank over there. If we follow this part of the grass right here, we see that there's a ditch in the grass. The grass color is also slightly different, meaning somebody's done something at some point in that area. It doesn't quite look like a swale, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for where it is in relation to the house. But if we follow it down, we're gonna see that there's a large depression right here. And then we can see 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines in the grass going towards the road. So the next step what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that probe right there and we're gonna probe into each of those 3 lines to determine, is this the drain field, right? And how that works is this probe is basically just a steel bar, and we're looking to see if we can hit the stone in the trench itself. By hitting the stone, that'll be able to tell us what the soil or the soil's doing, what the stone's doing. Is it wet? Is it dry? Is it kind of wet? What's happening inside of this drain field? From there, to determine how old these drain fields are, we're gonna walk to the end of the trenches. And the reason why is in our area, more modern systems, generally 10 to 15 years or less, would have some kind of observation port at the end of the trench. So we can see here, this is roughly where the trench lines look like they end, and we don't see any kind of PVC cleanout. We don't see any absorption components accessible at grade. You may be asking yourself, well, what does that matter? Why does it matter if you don't see anything at grade? And it really doesn't, right? But it does help me to determine how old the system is, right? So if it was 10 years, 15 years or less, we would have those pipes. So we know the tank looks to be original. They've replaced the absorption system, but the drain fields that they've put in are definitely older than 10 or 15 years because the pipes aren't there. So that means sometime between the mid 80s and early 2010s, somebody replaced the septic system. Now, if we go with the average expected lifespan of 30 or 40 years, that would mean that somebody probably replaced this thing in the 90s or the early 2000s, right? So they should have plenty of time left to go. And how we check to see if these drain fields are working is we introduce water into the system called a hydraulic load. Essentially what that is where we take the bedroom count of this property, so this is a 3-bedroom house, and then we multiply that by 150 per bedroom. So we know that this house should be designed to accommodate 450 gallons of water. It's been one person living here for the last 5 years. So that means we got to put a little bit of water into the system to basically put half the design spec to see what it's doing, right? So in this particular circumstance, we're going to aim for about 225 to make sure that everything's draining correctly. We've already probed the trenches once, they're dry. We put the water in, we probe the trenches again to see, are they still dry? Ideally, after that load, you're able to see that nothing's changed, no additional water or moisture is observed, and that means that everything's working the way that it's supposed to work. Let me know below, have you ever had your septic inspected? What did you do for your inspection, right? Did they go through this process? Did you even have one inspected at all? Leave a comment below. Now, I hope that this was an informative video to kind of walk you through a little bit about what does a house from the 1970s have as a septic system, and kind of what can you find during the inspection. Do you find that sometimes these tanks are new, sometimes they're old, sometimes it's original, sometimes parts have been replaced, not the entire system. In this particular circumstance, it looks like the tank's original, but they've replaced most of the other components. They replaced the sewer line, they replaced the drain fields, they added a new standpipe, they added a new riser. So I think they're in pretty good shape. It's always nice whenever you see an old house like this that's been updated, because that means that the person moving in is not going to have as many issues pop up when they start living here. I hope you enjoy content like this. If you do, hit that like button, hit subscribe. I have more videos posted every day on the world of well and septic. Until next time, guys.